Today's topic is passengers on traffic stops, what you can and can't do when interacting with non-drivers. I'm Steve Serbalik, and I'm an attorney with AsCops in Arizona. I've recently been asked quite a bit about police officers' lawful authority in dealing with non-drivers on traffic stops. Our goal today is to provide some background and information on what case law says about this topic. This video is part of the Law Enforcement Lessons series. Today, I'll cover what the law allows for dealing with vehicle occupants, things that are not legally allowed, and best practices. And please note that this is a general summary and not legal advice, and your department policies might vary, so please consult with your lawyer and your union representation to talk about your specific circumstance. Our goal for this video is to provide you with basic information to help you understand the law regarding this part of your job. But, as always, the most important thing for you to know is if you find yourself in trouble at work or worried about your legal rights and responsibilities, please contact representation as soon as possible. Experienced representation can provide direction and counsel, but only if you ask. So first, let's talk about what you are allowed to do on a traffic stop. More than 40 years ago, the Supreme Court held that you may order a driver to either stay in or get out of a car as part of a lawful traffic stop. Similarly, more than 20 years ago, the Supreme Court extended that holding to passengers detained during a traffic stop. You can order them out of the car as well. You are also allowed to make, and I'm quoting here, ordinary inquiries incident to the traffic stop, which, in my opinion, includes asking passengers for their names and their IDs. And clearly, you can act on information that you gather. You can develop reasonable suspicion of other crimes based upon things that you see while talking with people in the car, including items on the floor, strange behavior, and other factors that may indicate criminal activity. That said, recent case law, particularly here in the Ninth Circuit, makes it clear that there are a number of things that you can't do when it comes to dealing with passengers in a traffic stop. First, remember, the primary purpose of a traffic stop is to enforce traffic laws. That doesn't mean you need to ignore everything else, just the opposite. Look for clues of other crimes. But if you don't develop reasonable suspicion of other crimes during your initial contact and traffic-related investigation, you can't delay the traffic stop beyond its original purpose. This relates to dealing with passengers as well. If a passenger refuses to provide you with an ID, that is not alone a basis for delaying a traffic stop. While drivers, obviously, are legally required to provide ID, the Supreme Court has held that without reasonable suspicion that a person, specifically here a passenger, has committed a crime, they do not need to provide you with their name. Arizona state law that requires people to identify themselves to police officers only applies to a lawful detention based upon reasonable suspicion that a person has committed, is committing, or is about to commit a crime. With that background, keep in mind, a key factor in looking at the reasonableness of an officer's actions is the concept of delay. If you want to identify a passenger, don't extend the traffic stop to attempt to get this information. Ask at the beginning of a stop and move on if you don't get an answer right away. Next, remember that consent is a useful tool. If passengers immediately consent to providing their ID, great. If not, move on. If they provide you with a fake ID or with a bogus name, that very likely provides reasonable suspicion that they are committing an independent crime of providing false information to a law enforcement officer. But if they simply refuse to answer, move on. And of course, look for independent reasonable suspicion of another crime. Watch for unusual behavior, and take advantage of the concept of plain view. Remember that you are allowed to order the occupants of a vehicle, including passengers, out of the car. Just make sure that you don't delay beyond the original purpose of the stop if you can't develop independent reasonable suspicion of another crime. So here's the recap. We covered what you can do on a traffic stop. You can order the driver and the passengers to exit a vehicle. You can ask passengers to voluntarily provide ID, and you can act on any reasonable suspicion that you might develop during the course of your investigation. We also covered what you aren't allowed to do. You can't delay the stop or force a passenger to provide ID unless you develop independent reasonable suspicion that the passenger has committed or is about to commit a crime. You also can't arrest a passenger for simply failing to provide ID or failing to obey an order unless you have independent probable cause. Next, we talk about best practices, avoiding delay, asking for consent, and identifying reasonable suspicion of other crimes. Finally, once again, please remember, if you have questions, ask for help. Your department likely has resources for you to consult, and representation and lawyers like me are here to help you navigate through the significant issues that you might face as a police officer. Don't go at it alone. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit the button below to subscribe for more law enforcement lessons. I'm Steve Serbalik. Stay safe out there.